welcome to yet another edition of the India Development Debate. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and straight on to what continues to make headlines. Less than 12 hours after his arrival in India, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman vowed to support India's fight against terrorism in the region. The Crown Prince and Prime Minister Modi held a joint conference and agreed that pressure needs to be exerted on countries supporting terrorism without either of them really naming Pakistan, and that has raised many eyebrows, because remember, Prime Minister Modi broke protocol, received MBS as he's popularly called in the capital last night. Many people have raised eyebrows, have raised concerns on that, especially given the fact that Mohammed bin Salman comes all the way from Pakistan after offering a $20 billion aid. And remember also that he did not for once name Pulwama, acknowledge the crisis and the terror strike, or even name Pakistan. So there are many questions that need to be debated on where are we as far as the diplomacy with Saudi Arabia is concerned. Was this a diplomatic failure or a diplomatic success? And all of that we'll discuss over the next half an hour. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and joining us is a stellar panel: Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador to South Korea and Canada; Sushant Sareen, strategic affairs expert and senior fellow, Observer Research Foundation; Bharat Karnad, research professor in national security studies in the Center for Policy Research; and Tilak Deveshar, former special secretary, Government of India and Pakistan expert. So thanks very much all of you for being with us. And the reality is, Bharat Karnad, if I may start with you, that Mohammed bin Salman is coming to India after he had visited Pakistan, where he had promised a $20 billion aid. How do you assess the meeting that he's had in India? The Pulwama attack wasn't discussed, threadbare. It at least wasn't referred to in no uncertain terms by this person. And Pulwama attack, do you believe, has had an impact, or has it overshadowed this visit? Or was it really more about business with terrorism as a nominal aspect? Was this a diplomatic success or a diplomatic failure, according to you?
No, I think the Pulwama incident was just something that happened while MBS was coming into Pakistan. I don't think he anticipated that it would, in a sense, color his journey to the subcontinent. You know, rouse the kind of sentiments on this side of the border. I think he came to Pakistan to give the Imran regime moral support and an economic leg up with the $20 billion investment and so on, as a counterpoise to the Chinese investment in the CPEC, etc. But the larger, I think, role he wants to play, I think, and he indicated that in his during his trip to Islamabad and his talks with Imran and so on, he would like to play the role of mediator on Kashmir. Now, this is an ongoing effort on his part to recover for himself the reputation he lost with the killing of Khashoggi, the Washington Post columnist in Turkey. So he's on, shall we say, he's on a campaign to cleanse his name and improve his reputation, which taken a hit after the Khashoggi thing and the Americans and the European countries lambasting the Saudi regime, etc. So what happened in Pulwama, I think, was incidental to the trip, and now that it's there, he'd like not to address it, because he's bound to either upset Islamabad on the one side, and if he were to side with India in any way, and so on. So he has to essentially keep quiet and say nothing,
Mr. Karnad,
and hope the kind of event is forgotten, or at least that the Modi government does not emphasize it.
Okay, just give me a minute, because I want to take this across to Tilak Deveshar before I take it across to the panel at large. And issuing a joint statement with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Prime Minister Modi did bring up the Pulwama terror attack, asking for the need to put pressure on countries that harbor terror without naming Pakistan. Why do you believe he chose not to consciously name Pakistan at a forum where many people thought he is going to be far more assertive with it?
I think we first of all need to be clear what are our objectives in our relationship with Saudi Arabia. Let's not forget there are 3 million Indians working in Saudi Arabia. They remit about $12 billion a year in sort of remittances back home. And Saudi Arabia, we buy 20% of our energy requirements on crude from Saudi Arabia. Now put this in perspective. And a lot of is coming out in the media that what statement he made in Pakistan and what statement, compare the statement in India. We should not try and make a linkage. We keep talking about not wanting to link ourselves with Pakistan, then ultimately we go ahead and do it. We need to look at our bilateral relations with Saudi Arabia in bilateral terms. What is important for us? Likewise, Saudi Arabia is looking for what is important for them. If you think that Saudi Arabia is going to name Pakistan on Indian soil, come on, where are we, what are we thinking about? He will not, because they have a different kind of a relationship with Pakistan, which goes back, which is based on religion. They have problems with Iran. Pakistan is in fact a battlefield between Iran and Saudi Arabia. There are a whole lot of different issues that Saudi Arabia has with Pakistan. And if we think that Pakistan is going to name Pakistan and try and shame Pakistan on Indian soil, I'm sorry, that wasn't really par for the course.
Okay, fair point indeed. Let me take this across then to Vishnu Prakash, who really knows a lot about diplomacy, sir. Did Mr. Modi, and I agree with Mr. Teveshar that, there is lots at stake with Saudi Arabia, whether it's $12 billion of remittances, the 3 to 4 million Indians who work there, the kind of oil that we buy from them. But did Mr. Modi, and that's a constant criticism that's coming against him, at least in the political corridors, that did he err in breaking protocol, going to personally receive him with such abundance? Because this was only hours after the Crown Prince had promised billions of dollars to Pakistan. I know symbolism has a place in diplomacy, but was this overreach perhaps avoidable, especially given the public sentiment?
Not at all, absolutely not. I think we are committing the mistake of identifying Saudi Arabia with Pakistan. It is not a Pakistani leader who has been received with warmth, or red carpet welcome has been rolled out for him, red carpet welcome has been given to him. But it is for a Saudi leader, and Saudi Arabia is one of the very important G20 countries in the world. It's a leader of the Islamic world. We have been painstakingly building ties with Saudi Arabia, and ever since 2006, the relationship has been gradually taken to a higher and higher level. And it is very much in keeping with the substance of the relationship, the culture, the optics. I mean, let me for a moment pause and say, okay, Prime Minister Modi, first of all, let's be very clear, I'm not just emphasizing optics, but I'm emphasizing the substance. And given the substance and the culture in the Arab world, where physical hugs for a visiting leader, for these kind of welcome, the optics are important. And then the substance of the relationship is also such that we need to invest in it. But look at the optics also. In 2007, 24th January 2007, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi had come. Prime Minister Modi had broken protocol and received him. Then the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia gets received at the airport in Pakistan, at Islamabad. Now, the same people today who were criticizing Prime Minister Modi for receiving MBS would have said, look, I mean, we have snubbed him by not receiving him. Comparisons would have been drawn between the kind of welcome that was given in Islamabad and in Delhi. Comparisons would have been drawn between Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia. I think it doesn't take us anywhere. This was a befitting welcome given to an important leader in a country in which we have very important stakes, not just economic, not just political, but also diplomatic, security, strategic, and so on. And it was mentioned by my co-panelists that we have the Indian community. But let me take it a little further and just bear with me for one more minute. The relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia is an important relationship. So Pakistan is a rogue state, a failing state, a terror state, but yet it is one of the largest countries in the world. And they are providing security to the palace. They are also balancing the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and the Iran factor prevails very much. So the fact that we are chipping away at that relationship, softening that relationship, trying to and let's not go by the public pronouncements that have been made. I never expected Pakistan to be named in the joint statement or upfront, given the kind of relationship that obtains between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. But in these matters, a discrete discussion, and we are very clear, it's quite evident that terrorism formed an important point of the discussion. I mean, it had to, although it is not a one-point relationship, but for us, it's very, very important. So I guess what we will see in the coming years is, coming months period, is that gently, discreetly, Saudi Arabia will try to encourage Pakistan, nudge Pakistan, not to engage in these nefarious activities. Whether it will have an impact or not remains to be seen.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. And in fact, Saudi Arabia's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs has also spoken about how they will try and de-escalate. I'll come to that in just a minute from now. But Bharat Karnar, if I may come back to you, and I think, you know, a lot has been said about the relationship that Saudi Arabia shares with Pakistan and that it shares with India. The bilateral relationship between the Saudis and Pakistan is different, and many people will insist it's a more patron-client relationship. Look at the kind of money they've had to invest. It's a bankrupt country. They need that money. So it's a more patron-client relationship. Whereas in India, the terms of engagement are very different. We are engaged as far as defense is concerned. We are an investment destination. We've got a lot of people working there. So remittance angle on of that. We are one of their big markets for oil. My question is, shouldn't then we have approached this relationship very differently? And many people insist that perhaps the time has come to have scratched the surface and look at more valued diplomacy, which yields results and not motherhood statements. I mean, how must we de-hyphenate our relationship with Saudi Arabia?
Now, look, I don't think we should overstate the notion that Pakistan is a client state of Saudi Arabia. There is that nuclear angle that people don't talk about, which is that, you know, it's been said that the Saudis essentially financed the Pakistani nuclear program by paying off the Chinese to transfer technologies, nuclear material, and so on. Nuclear missile and the entire technologies and attendant you know, wherewithal to Pakistan, with the idea that in a crisis, Pakistanis would, shall we say, hand over a weapon or two to the Saudis if they ever need it in a desperate situation. So it's more than a client-patron relationship here. And by the way, the comparative strategic or security relationship with Saudis, really, it's at the very beginning, very elementary stage. While with Pakistan, it's a far more intimate relationship. If you recall, a former president of Pakistan, or rather the chief martial law administrator, General Ziaul Haq, was a brigadier who headed the Pakistani protection of the Saud family in Riyadh. So, I mean, that's the sort of the role that the Pakistan army has played for a very long time. So it's not what you suggest, and I think there's far more complexity there than we tend to give it credit, and Pakistan is on a more equal footing, so we have to be careful not to look at the Saudi-Pakistan relationship from a sort of, you know, the jaundiced viewpoint that we tend to do. They have relationship with Pakistan that cannot be denied, and they're not going to you know, we shouldn't second guess the relationship, but we should also be sure that there are limitations to how much and how intimate India will get with Saudis. And one last point, the fact that, you know, that the Saudis have suddenly realized the dangers of and the perils of terrorism and so on, that's a little hard to swallow, considering that the Saudis, so-called Arab charities, and the Saudis in particular, have been financing the kind of, you know, extremist Islam of the Wahhabi sect from Saudi Arabia for about 60 years now. And certainly since the Afghanistan imbroglio starting in the late 70s. So how are we going to separate the Saudis from the financing of the extremist Islam that has led to the Islamic State in the present day, and to Jaish and the Lashkar-e-Taiba and all these elements in Pakistan, who also get funding from the so-called Arab charities? We have to be very careful about all this.
Absolutely. There is no denying that, and which is why I think I'm going to take a quick follow-up on a more contrarian point of view, and I think I agree with you. We are perhaps reading the Pakistan-Saudi Arabia relationship very simplistically, at least the way it's being talked about in narrative. And Sushant Sareen, my apologies to keep you waiting. But the question is that when he spoke, he obviously made no mention of Pulwama in Pakistan. It's been established here on this channel and in the show that one wasn't expecting this either, given that they have close ties with Pakistan. He simply said, we share a common concern on terrorism. We would like to tell our friends that in India, we'll cooperate on all fronts, including intelligence sharing. You know, the question is not why he did not choose to name Pakistan, but the question is that, is it time India accepts and does away with this wishful thinking that we can have a relationship with Saudi Arabia which can triumph over its relationship with Pakistan, because that is one of Islamic Brotherhood which trumps over with the one that the Saudis share with us, and that point that Bharat Karnad was making.
No, look, I agree with all my co-panelists up to a point. My problem, however, is that surely somebody in the government, somebody in the diplomatic establishment, because a lot of this information of what to expect out of a visit actually flows out of the diplomatic establishment in India. Why were these kind of expectations raised that maybe we will get something major out of the Saudis on Pulwama or Pakistan or terrorism? So the point is that having raised the expectations, now these questions are being raised, and then for the government to turn around and say that we've actually managed to come on the same page as the Saudis on the issue of terrorism, that's a load of hogwash. Okay, we don't expect any country to say that no, terrorism is perfectly kosher and that nobody needs to do anything about it, let it go on the way it's going on. So what the Saudis and the Indians have said in the joint statement is the kind of normal lip service which everybody pays. The question is not about what protocol was broken or any of the other stuff. My question is that if the Saudis are now coming to the point and saying that we are ready to mediate between India and Pakistan, etc., then what is the pushback from our side? Just as we depend upon the Saudis for a lot of trade and our energy supplies and all, we are also a market for the Saudis. So it's not as though it's a one-way relationship. And as far as religion trumping all other forms of relationship, I think we need to take that also with a pinch of salt. It all entirely depends on how much you make yourself indispensable to the other side. Now, finally, on this whole question of if terrorism is such an important issue for us, and it has become increasingly a very important issue, what was the pushback from our side? And when the Saudis were trying to offer their offices for mediation or trying to cool tempers down, then should somebody in the government not have listed out a set of metrics that we first expect the Saudis to deliver, to show that they actually become, bona fide interlocutors or intermediaries. Before all these people come and give us, preach the lessons of peace to the victim, perhaps they should be asked to deliver, okay, fine, these are the 5 things. Can you please ask the Pakistanis to shuck up on this so that we can then move forward? And if they can't do it, what are their good offices worth? So my point is that fine, if we have an economic relationship, let us admit, we have managed to get some terrorists out of the Saudis, we have managed to exchange some information, some of these terrorists have been deported, extradited from the Saudis side, but why are we raising these expectations then? I think we should be a lot more circumspect before we jump into this.
Fair point. No, fair point. Let me quickly take this across to Tilak Deveshwar. And sir, I kind of agree with Sushant Sareen that expectations were raised. There was a lot of euphoria. There was a lot of wishful thinking on vague statements that were really coming in. And to Saudi Arabia's MOS and Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Adel Al-Jubair, who said that Riyadh will try and de-escalate tensions between India and Pakistan in the wake of the Pulwama terror attack. My question really is, why at least did we not ask Saudi Arabia to refer to or to undo the joint statement with Pakistan, where Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have called for avoiding, quote-unquote, politicization of the UN listing regime, and this at a time when we are trying with all our might and with all our diplomatic heft to get Masood Azhar declared a global terrorist. I mean, is asking for a terrorist to be designated Politicization?
Yeah, but here again, we ourselves hyphenate our relationship with Pakistan. Irrespective of what the joint statement of Pakistan and Saudi Arabia was, we are still going to go ahead to list Masood Azhar as a terrorist. It doesn't really matter what the Saudis and the Pakistanis say in the joint statement. In fact, the hype was raised in India. I think a lot of it was also done in the media. That what will he claim? We need to have that expunged, and so on and so forth. It doesn't work that way. International diplomacy just doesn't work that way. Let's not try and hyphenate ourselves the relationship with Pakistan. Pakistan is a much too small a country. Let's not go down that route. And if Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have decided they want to put that politicization of that listing thing, well, we are still going to go ahead. It doesn't really make a difference to us. It's no water off our backs. So I don't think that we should get too concerned about that. Yes, where a question of mediation is concerned, if I'm not mistaken, I think the EMEA spokesman has categorically said that this issue was not even raised. And secondly, there are some things which are in the public domain, which was in the joint statement and what the Prime Minister and the Crown Prince said, and something which are behind closed doors. We don't know what happened behind closed doors. And I'm sure this issue of terrorism, Pakistan's involvement in terrorism and so on and so forth, would definitely have been discussed threadbare because it is so close. The event has just happened. All of us are hurting. I'll be very surprised if this issue wasn't discussed either.
But before I go any further, Vishnu Prakash, the Crown Prince is going to travel to the other big player in the Indo-Pak terror angle, and that's China, which has regularly blocked our efforts to declare Masood Azhar a global terrorist. Pakistan is perhaps a different play, but China is an altogether different play as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned. Are we once again building up expectations that, like France and like New Zealand and like US and UK, we will perhaps be able to pressurize China into acknowledging our demands for Masood Azhar, the whole UN proposal being moved?
I think we are we are in different segments of India then, because I have not seen either any wishful thinking on our part or building of expectations or the kind of things that are being alluded to. I have not seen that, and I am a very active media watcher. Now, as far as, before I turn to China, just one moment on Pakistan. I think we are being we are not doing justice to Indian diplomacy. We are expecting instant gratification. Instant gratification does not happen. Relationship is a very painstaking, building is a painstaking process. And as my co-panelist said, you do not do diplomacy through the public fora or from the public platform or the media platform. Things are done quietly and discreetly. And I am absolutely confident, as I am speaking, looking right into the eye of the camera, that this issue would have been discussed at length during the one-on-one talks in particular and the delegation level talks. Now, as far as China is concerned, China is a known adversary. China's posture is very clear. China is using Pakistan as a proxy, as a cat's paw. Pakistan is doing China's dirty work, and China is not going to relent. China will only relent when they find that they are a majority of one. They find that every country has moved, and they look around and find that they are in the company of only two countries. One is called Pakistan and one is called North Korea. Only then China will relent. We will have to gradually, carefully, in a calibrated fashion, do what we need to do vis-a-vis China. That's a different discourse altogether. But let me say with all humility that Indian diplomacy is not, we are not wearing any rose-tinted glasses. We are clear-headed. We understand realpolitik, and it's not for nothing that India's stock has risen as our economy has grown, and as we have learned to play the game the world plays.
Okay, I have time for one last question, and given that everybody has got two responses, I'll take the last one to Sushant Sareen, who did stay patiently while we went around on our second round of questions. And Sushant Sareen, I think everything boils down to one thing. President Trump has said it's a horrible situation. Would be wonderful if India Pakistan got along. MBS makes no mention of Pulwama or Pakistan. It wasn't expected to either. We've got New Zealand and UK and France backing us. China is silent. At the end of the day, are we left to fend for ourselves in this fight against terror? And is that a reality that one needs to acknowledge, one needs to make peace with? And also, you know, there are people, and at least opponents in the political circle are saying the lack of a coherent foreign policy is perhaps at play here in this regime. Are you going to be as harsh?
Well, entirely, because I don't think we have a Pakistan policy. We've never had one. And I can tell you that long years back, when I asked this question of somebody who was heading the Pakistan desk, I was scolded. And 20 years later, the same person lamented that we have no Pakistan policy. So clearly, we have no Pakistan policy, and it's quite visible in the kind of flip-flops we do all the time. For 40 years, we've been facing unrelenting terrorism from Pakistan. What is our policy towards Pakistan as a state? And, you know, for all these so-called accomplishments of our diplomacy, how in the last 40 years have we managed to isolate Pakistan or not isolate Pakistan? I think that says a lot. Secondly, you know, behind closed doors, you can discuss anything, right? We discussed the Simla agreement apparently behind closed doors. There are a lot of assurances were given behind closed doors. And then once you are out of that room, you are free to renege on those things. So let us wait and see whether the Saudis deliver on something which they might have assured to us behind closed doors. And finally, I think we need to be very clear about this, that nobody is going to pull our chestnuts out of the fire. We have to do it ourselves. If we continue to depend upon other countries that they will intervene on our behalf, that somebody else will come and declare Pakistan a terrorist state, but we will not, we will continue to have Mombatti marches and mushairas with the Pakistanis and play all sorts of other games with them, then why would anybody else take us seriously? Everybody has their interests. Until and unless we can tell them, we can position ourselves in a way that their interest with us outweigh anything interest which they have with the Pakistanis, I don't think anybody is going to come down to a level where they start backing us completely.
Okay. Just to balance the debate in the end, I can't thank this wonderful panel enough. Firstly, Mr. Karnad, Mr. Devesh, Mr. Prakash, and of course, Sushant Sareen for being with us in this edition. Thanks for keeping the debate sane, for putting out voices and opinions that count, that matter. And thank you for bringing sanity back to discussions on Indian television. So on that count, I will thank you. But I think sane voices need to prevail. We can't be putting all our eggs in one basket. Yes, there are countries that are backing us, but there are many others who will continue to be ambivalent. And we've got to perhaps move with sane voices prevailing, with a strong head in the right diplomatic forum. But thank you very much for being with us on this edition of the India Development Debate. We take a quick breather and we'll be back with plenty more. We put the spotlight on politics in the other edition of the India Development Debate. We are talking about Mahagathbandhan versus Mahagathbandhan. It's no longer Modi versus the rest. We tell you why in just a moment.